Welcome back, Zane here with you, and today I want to explain to you why I believe that Bitcoin is a life raft. A life raft escape from the debt-based monetary system that we're all a part of in some way. And right now there are millions of people around the world who are struggling. They know that they're working harder for less. They can't quite understand why it is that the cost of living is rising. The price of homes is becoming out of reach. Young people are struggling to, figure out how they're going to be able to get into their first home and have a family, get married, build a future for themselves. I can kind of relate to this because I have 3 daughters in their 20s and, they're thinking about their financial future. And so we're at an interesting time right now, and this is all happening whilst we have a change in government in the US. Not to be political, but I believe that this change is very, very positive in terms of what it represents for the future prosperity, not just of America, but Australia and other so-called free nations around the world. But that aside, the big thing to realize is that this debt-based monetary system, this fiat system that we have, is really the cause of many of the problems that we face right now. The cost of living, the growing wealth gap, homelessness, people who, they just can't seem to be able to afford to pay the rents, and if they did have a home, a lot of people are really pushing it now with being able to keep up with their mortgage. And so much of this has to do with the system of broken money that we have today. This is not spoken about in the mainstream news. Most people don't really understand this because they haven't taken the time to learn about the history of money, and also the meaning of fiat currency. When you have a system that is controlled by the government and central bank, a monetary system that is controlled that way, we have to understand that he who controls the money supply has all of the power. And what we also know from history is that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And this has been shown time and time again over the centuries. And money was never meant to be something that was centralized. It was never meant to be something that was controlled by a select few. But this is what we've grown up with. The last few generations, that's all we know. Pretty much the last 100 years, that's how it's been. And so we don't really know any different. And this is why, for me, I've decided to escape the matrix and plug myself and my family's life into Bitcoin. And more people are realizing that Bitcoin represents this life raft. It represents this escape hatch from the debt-based monetary system, this fiat-based system that is really stealing and eroding your purchasing power. And, it was Milton Friedman, who was a very famous economist in the 1970s, who actually won a Nobel Prize for his work. And he was a big advocate of what was known as Austrian economics, which was all about productivity and production and the preservation of hard money, the preservation of purchasing power. And that is the very opposite to what we function on these days, which is Keynesian economics, which is all about essentially about spending. And so Milton Friedman said that inflation is taxation without legislation. Inflation is taxation without legislation. And so what's happening right now is we have this really high hyperinflationary environment, and people don't realize that it's a form of tax and enslavement on their lives, and they don't know how to escape from it. And when you're plugged into the matrix and you earn fiat currency, if you're not in that top 3 to 5% elite group who are very rich in assets, and who are really the beneficiaries of all of this money printing, this monetary expansion, this currency debasement that has been going on the last 4 or 5 years, particularly since 2020, the COVID era, then you're really being left behind. So Bitcoin is something that I just encourage you to learn about if you're not already. It takes a little time for you to realize why it works. It is a paradigm shift from the system that we're in. We are under the illusion that everything around us needs to go up in price over time. And that's why our wages need to go up in order for us to be able to function. The problem is that there's no way our wages can keep up with inflation. And this is why people are getting left behind. This is why in the 60s and very early 70s, a family could function on one income and buy a home and a quarter-acre block out in the suburbs and have a good life. Whereas today, even two incomes, mum and dad going to work, is not enough, let alone to actually get into the housing market for most people. And this is the degradation of currency that has taken place pretty much over the last 50 or so years. It's happened in America, it's happening in Australia. And so we have an opportunity now to escape this system, to parallel our lives into this fixed supply, finite monetary instrument known as Bitcoin. The reason it works is because it is deflationary. When you plug your life into Bitcoin, the price of everything around you over time gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And that's because when you have a hard system of money, the natural state of a free market is actually deflation, provided that the system of money is fixed. We have a free market, but the natural state of it is inflation because we don't have a fixed supply money. We have no checks and balances. We have no idea how much currency is in circulation. We have no vote on how much they print. And every time they print, they're diluting the purchasing power of the dollars that you and I have in our pocket, of the savings we have in our bank account. And this is why it's so important now to plug your life into a hard form of money. And for the longest time, it's been gold and silver, and I'm a big advocate and believer in gold and silver, precious metals. But I'm a bigger believer in Bitcoin because not only over the last decade has it been the best performing asset by a country mile, significantly outperforming gold and real estate for that matter, but because it is actually sovereign money. It is money that is outside the matrix, that you control. Essentially, you're your own bank, and the value of it is mathematically going to increase over time. And the reason for that is because the infinite currency, being the Australian dollar or the US dollar, New Zealand dollar, British pound, wherever it is that you live, that is an infinite currency, and it is finding its way into finite assets. And this is why the price of scarce desirable real estate is going through the roof. But there is an even scarcer form of asset, monetary instrument known as Bitcoin, because there will only ever be 21 million. And for that reason, it is becoming the best performing asset because it is absorbing the infinite financial energy into it being a finite source. So I want you to just contemplate that. I'm a great believer in it. I'd encourage you to get your hands on the Bitcoin Standard. It's a book written by a gentleman by the name of Saifedean Ammous, Ammous. You can find it on Amazon or Audible if you prefer to listen rather than to read. But that was my first foray into Bitcoin back in 2018, and I haven't stopped learning ever since. So I'd encourage you to get your hands on that book if you haven't already. There are also some great resources online, so many awesome podcasts on YouTube, and other short videos that I can point you to if you want to message me below, and I'm happy to point you in that direction. But other than that, just want you to understand that we have an opportunity now. There's only something like 100 million people currently involved in Bitcoin around the world, and I believe that that is all about to change. I believe that with the US about to announce a strategic Bitcoin reserve, they're going to start putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. This is going to create a lot of interest from other not central banks, but governments around the world who are crippled by debt and wanting to find scarce desirable monetary units that they can plug their balance sheets into. And so this is the path forward. This is the new economy. This is what's going to happen. And you don't want to be caught in the new system that is put out by the government and central bank, which is going to be these CBDCs, these central bank digital currencies. Even if you're wealthy and you have plenty of assets and money, you're going to be caught in the matrix, and you are going to be trapped in this system of surveillance money, which is what the CBD system is going to be all about. So even if you're wealthy, you don't think this applies to you, I'd highly encourage you to still learn about Bitcoin. Some of the wealthiest people on earth are now involved in it, because even though they just dismissed it in the beginning, which is what we all do, they've now taken the time to actually learn about it. And I've never met anybody who's taken the time to learn about Bitcoin and has actually put in the work, and who's come out the other side and said that this doesn't make sense. When you put in the work and the penny drops, you begin to realize that it is the scarcest, most finite, and the only deflationary monetary system that we have ever had, completely decentralized, not owned by anybody, not controlled by a government, central bank, and it's not going anywhere. And in the words of the great Michael Saylor, the reason to learn about Bitcoin is because it's crossed the chasm now. It is something that everybody's going to need, that cannot be stopped, and that still, at this stage, still very few people understand. This is the reason to learn about it. Fixed supply money. It's only going to get more and more expensive the longer you leave it, and that's my message today. Thanks for listening. Please leave a comment, anything you want to share, leave a like, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.